go in and we'll get started with our class tonight. Right. Austin, go to the bedroom. You gotta go to the bedroom for me, please.
Let's go.
All right, everybody, we're just trying to get this put where it needs to be, and then we will start our lesson. If I can find my link again. Go ahead and tell you we are going to be in Exodus 28 as we're going to start in just a moment. Exodus 28, we're going to look at the priests and what is involved in the priesthood and what the priests did. All right, I think we're good where we need to be. We are shared everywhere. Let me double check. All right, sorry about that. Just trying to make sure we are put where we need to be and are streaming where we need to be so everybody can get to us and everybody can see us. I know as everybody's starting to get on. As I said, we are in Exodus 28. We are looking at the priesthood. You remember last week we talked about Exodus 27. So we looked at the idea of Moses and God telling Moses about the tabernacle and the layout of the tabernacle, the coverings, the wall, and all that is included in that. Today we continue looking at this God's command of the tabernacle, and that's where we're going to spend the rest of this book pretty much discussing. We're going to look at the way Exodus lines up after chapter 24 is you have the God telling Israel what to do to prepare for the covenant from verses chapter 24 to about chapter 30. Then 32 and 33, you have the break with the golden calf. And then from 34 to about 40, about to the end of the book, you have the Israelites doing what God has said. So we're taking a little bit of time on the front end to sort of go through this so that when we get to the second part of this, we can go a little faster because it's going to be the same things we've already talked about and already discussed. Tonight, we, as I said, are in Exodus 20. There we go, Exodus 28, looking at Aaron and his sons. Now, let's go ahead and get started here in verse 1. It says, "Then bring near to you Aaron your brother and his sons with him, from among the people of Israel to serve me as priest. Aaron and Aaron's sons, Nadab and Baihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, you shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for glory and for beauty. You shall speak to all the skillful, whom I have filled with a spirit of skill, that they make Aaron's garments to consecrate him for my priesthood. These are the garments that they shall make: a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a coat of checkered work, a turban, and a sash. They shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, and his son shall serve me as priest. They shall receive gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and finely twined linen." So what we see here is that God tells Moses, you're going to bring Aaron and his brother or his sons before you, and you're going to consecrate them, or you're going to give them this position. That's 29 is going to be the consecration of these men. 28, you're going to have special garments they're going to wear. And he says, they're going to serve me as priests. They're going to be the priesthood. And this is what we see given out through the law, through the law of Moses, is that all the priests are going to come from the family of Aaron. And so this is why it's very important that they keep this family tree. Now, what's interesting about Aaron is you notice at the end of verse 1, you have Aaron and his sons, or Aaron and Aaron's sons. You have them divided in half. They're grouped in, put in groups of two, I guess would be another way of saying this. You have Nadab and Baihu, and then Eleazar and Ithamar. Now, what's interesting about these two, if you remember Nadab and Abihu, is apparently the older two brothers. They're the ones that offer the strange fire to God, and they're the ones that are consumed with fire that we'll read about in Leviticus chapter 10. And so they're grouped together. And then you have Eleazar and Ithamar. Eleazar and Ithamar are two men who are described as being very outstanding, very highly considered men. Eleazar being the one who is going to take Aaron's place once he dies. And so God tells Moses, you're going to set these guys apart from my priesthood. Now, he's going to change this whole system. What's interesting is up till this point, we've seen various people offer sacrifices. We've seen heads of the family offer sacrifices. We've seen young men offer sacrifices in chapter 24. To now we're going to see in this chapter, or next chapter, Moses offering sacrifices for Aaron and the priest, and they offer these sacrifices to ordain and to consecrate, to prepare Aaron and his sons for what they're going to do, and then they're going to be the ones who are solely responsible for these sacrifices. And so this is sort of an interesting point, because sometimes we don't think it through, or don't consider all the ideas that we think about sacrifices. We think about the Levites were the one who offered them. Well, there was a time that people beside the Levites offered them before the law of Moses was in place. And here we have this set aside to where God is going to set them into this role. Verse 2, you notice that you're going to make holy garments for Aaron and his brother, for Aaron and for the high priest. You're going to make a special garment. Notice this garment is going to be for glory and for beauty. The glory and beauty of God is going to be seen in the glory and beauty of the outfit, the uniform, if you will, that the high priest will have. And he knows verse 3. Verse 3 is a very interesting verse, because it sort of gives us a hint of how Aaron or how Moses and the people of Israel were able to accomplish all that God laid out for them. In that he says, you shall speak to all the skillful, whom I have filled with the spirit of skill. This idea is that they are going to he's going to speak to men who God has blessed with this skillfulness, with this ability to do the work. And again, there's some hint later that God has revealed some to them after they take on this job of what these this uniform, what these furniture pieces, what all this is supposed to look like. And so you're going to make these garments. And he says, you're going to make these garments for Aaron, and you're consecrating to my priesthood. He's going to be chosen and selected, that he's going to be made holy. And that's the idea of consecrate. It's to be made holy. Then we talked about this. We read this, verse 4. It talks about the pieces you're going to make. You're going to make a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a coat of checker work, a turban, and a sash. And you notice that he says, these will be the holy garments for Aaron and his sons to serve me as priests. And then they're going to receive this gold. They're going to receive gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarns, and finely twined linen. Now, what's interesting is there's going to be some descriptions here. We'll talk about this here, where God's going to describe them sewing this robe, or sewing this ephod, sewing this these other pieces. And he's going to talk about putting a gold thread in there. And some people wonder, well, how did they do this? Well, later on, and I forget exactly which chapter it is, but it's in the 30s, we're going to see that we're going to be told how they did this. That it says that the Israelites would take a piece of gold, they would hammer it out flat, and then they would cut it into very fine threads. And I was thinking about that this week, to imagine that not having any kind of technology, any kind of machine that can do that, but to by hand take the gold and first beat it flat, and then take that gold and fix it where you get a very fine thread that's put out, and the work that was involved there. But this is the work that God called for these people to do. And so God calls them to make this outfit for Aaron. Now let's talk about some of these things that are made. Number one, it says, verse 6, they shall make the Epithet of Gold, of blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and of the fine twined linen, were skillfully worked. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces attached to its 2 edges, so that it may be joined together. And a skillfully woven band on it shall be made like it, and it shall be 1 piece with it of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and finely twined linen. So basically, what this is that you're going to have this ephod. The ephod is a robe, I guess a robe, a cloak type piece of clothing that's worn under the undergarments. We're going to talk about that in a little bit of what's to be worn underneath. And this ephod is set up top. And basically, the main part of this ephod is that it's going to have 2 chest or 2 shoulder plates. It's going to have 2 shoulder plates on it. We'll talk about those in just a minute. Because it's going to have 2 shoulder plates, going to have rings on them shoulder plates for something to attach to it. And it's going to, again, flow apparently in the back and in the sides. That this is going to be made. Again, notice this to be made in 1 piece. This was to show the quality, the specialness, the value of this garment, and that it was going to be 1 piece. It was going to be 1 piece with basically the head coat cut out of it, and spots for the arms. But otherwise, it was going to be 1 piece. You'll remember that where this scene's. This may not sound important to us, but if you remember in the crucifixion of Jesus, when the soldiers cast lots for his clothes, they cast lots because they take his clothes and are going to divide them up among themselves. But when they get to his robe, they see that it is such a fine piece of cloth that it was 1 solid piece, and that was very unusual. And so they cast lots to see who would get that robe, see who would get that garment, rather than ripping it in part. And that's sort of the idea of what this was to look like, this ephod. It was to have these holes again for the arms and for the head, and that was it. Otherwise, it was going to be 1 piece of solid fabric, and this was very unheard of, very, very hard to pull this off the way God intended this to do. And so you notice just the beauty of this. Then we get in verse 9 and we see what continues to be said about this thing. Verse 9, you shall take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel. 6 of the names on 1 stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone, in the order of their birth. As a jeweler engraves signets, so you shall engrave the 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel. You shall enclose them in settings of gold filigree. So you're going to have these 2 shoulder plates, and these 2 shoulder plates serve the purpose of housing these onyx stones. And again, when we think of onyx stones, we think of a black stone. Some wonder if that's what's meant here, because of some of the descriptions, onyx doesn't match the onyx that we call it. But this onyx was a stone that had a brilliance like fire to it. But no matter what kind of stone it was a very precious stone that was going to be put on the shoulder, 1 on each shoulder of the priest, and it was going to have the names of the tribes on it. 6 names on 1 shoulder and 6 names on the other shoulder. And what this was the priest. This symbolically represented the priest bearing the weight of Israel on his shoulders as he went into the tabernacle, went into the holy place and most holy place. And it's only during those times that Aaron would wear this garment. Now, you'll notice that you're to engrave these stones again with the names of the Israelites, with the tribes on it, is going to have this gold filigree around it. And then verse 12, you shall set the 2 stones on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord on his 2 shoulders for remembrance. You shall make settings of gold filigree and 2 chains of pure gold twisted like cords, and you shall attach the corded chains to make to the setting. So again, all these details, it's sort of hard to figure out exactly what this thing looked like, but some people have tried, and this is about the best representation of the ephod that I could find. And this is not just the ephod. This is a picture of the entire priestly garment. Now, what we're talking about the ephod, let me get this marker here, is right here on the shoulder. You'll notice on the shoulders, and then down this sides, you'll notice the side here and the side over here that we went to the back. This was what's thought to have been mostly the ephod, is that it's sort of this cloak top material. Then there was the robe that was to be wore with the inner garments as well, that white sleeve. We're going to talk about the breastplate in just a minute. You'll see that this breastplate is set a certain way. There are 4 rows and 3 columns. It represents the 12 tribes of Israel. There's the turban that will be put on his head. And also this gold piece right here is going to be what we're going to talk about in a minute. It's going to have a very special place in the wardrobe of the priest. So this is what the high priest would look like. And this was the idea. Remember, this was a garment. This was a uniform that was to bring out glory and also bring out beauty because he was going in to serve God. He was going in to worship God and to approach God for the people. And so as far as these onyx stones are concerned, it's on his right shoulder and left shoulder. He would have these stones. And again, the names of the 12 tribes be on 6 on one side and 6 on the other. From there, we get into the next piece of his uniform. And the next piece, notice, says you shall make a breastplate of a breastpiece of judgment in skilled work. In the style of the ephod, you shall make it. Of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen shall you make it. And it shall be square and doubled, a span its length and a span its breadth. And it shall be square and doubled, a span its length and a span its breadth. You shall set it in 4 rows of stones, a row of sardis, a topaz, and carbuncle shall be the first row, and the second row an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst, and the 4th row a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They shall set in gold filigree. And there shall be 12 stones with their names according to the names of the sons of Israel. They shall be like signets, each engraved with its name for the 12 tribes. You shall make for the breastpiece twisted chains of like cords of pure gold. And you shall make for the breastplate 2 rings of gold, and put the 2 rings on the 2 edges of the breastpiece. And you shall put the 2 cords of gold in the 2 rings at the edges of the breastpiece. The 2 ends of the 2 cords you shall attach to the 2 settings of the filigree, and so attach it to the front of the shoulder pieces of the ephod. You shall make 2 rings of gold and put them at the 2 ends of the breastplate on its inside edge next to the ephod. And you shall make 2 rings of gold and attach them in front of the lower part of the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod and at its seam above the skillfully woven band of the ephod. And they shall bind the breastpiece by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, so that it may lie on a skillfully woven band of ephod, and so the breastplate shall not come loose from the ephod. So Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel in the breastpiece of judgment on his heart when he goes into the holy place to bring them regular remembrance before the Lord. And the breastpiece of judgment you shall put, or in the breastpiece of judgment, you shall put the Urim and Thummim, and they shall be on Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord. Thus Aaron shall bear the judgment of the people of Israel on his heart before the Lord regularly. And so here's another zoomed in picture of what this breastplate is believed to look like. And again, this is just an artist idea. This is people who took the pattern told by God and tried to replicate as best we could, because a lot of this stuff that he talks about, these these settings and this and the descriptions are not very clear to us because we don't see this kind of thing. But apparently it was something very familiar, very common to these workers that God was able to describe it as he did. And so you'll notice, we can go back and look at these 12 stones. Some have tried throughout history to try to put significance to these 12 stones. There's really no way to put a significance to them. Some have tried to connect these 12 stones with the 12 stones of Revelation, the 12 precious stones that form the foundation of heaven. The problem with trying to connect those there is that there's only, I believe, 7 of the stones that are used. 7 of the stones used in this passage in Exodus 28 are the same ones in Revelation. The other 5 are different. So that falls apart too. The most, I guess, common, easiest translation of this is that this was just to show their value, in that he chose these 12 stones. I don't think there's any purpose in these stones that tries to connect to these tribes, and nothing that we know of. But basically, these stones were used to show the importance of God. And again, notice this breastplate is to be setting on his chest, is to be setting over his heart when he comes into Israel. So not only is it coming to Israel to bring them before God's remembrance on his shoulders, bearing the thought of the nation, he also has it on his heart. His heart is covered with these breastplates, or this breastpiece. Now, a few things about this breastpiece. Let's go back just a minute. Yeah, here we go. Verse 16, I think I doubled this verse. It shall be square and doubled, a span its length and a span its breadth. So basically, remember we said that their typical type of measurement was a cubit. I'm sorry, a cubit, 18 inches, the top of your middle finger to your elbow, typical man's length. A span is half that, is 9 inches. So this is a 9 by 9 square. And now you'll notice another thing is that it's supposed to be doubled. You're going to square it and then you're going to double it up. There's going to be a fold in it. The reason for that, and I bring this up, the reason for that is because what he's telling us at the end is that the Urim and Thummim are to be here. Now, what the Urim and Thummim are, we really don't know as far as what they are exactly. Some people think, and this is probably what it is this Urim and Thummim, we talked about this. Let me find the verse. Verse 30 is that this Urim and Thummim were used to discern God's will. When the people need to know what God wanted them to do, rather than necessarily going and talking, or not necessarily going and talking to God, but going and expecting God to reply, they would use this Urim and Thummim to determine God's will. And so a lot of people think this may be something like, and again, very probably not exactly like it, but something similar to dice, or some kind of stones that had markings on them. And what you would do, and the rest say it's something like dice, is sort of like you would take the Urim and Thummim, and if you had a request of God, a question of God, if a king had a question about going to war and God didn't respond to him, he could take the Urim and Thummim, and the priest would cast them, sort of like casting lots. And again, the exact idea of casting lots, we don't know exactly what they cast, but Urim and Thummim were something they would cast, and then determining on how they landed and what side was facing up, that would tell them what God wanted them to do. And so it's very fitting that Urim and Thummim would go in this breastplate. And that's the reason it's folded under. It has doubled up. Is that most Bible historians think that Urim and Thummim were in the backside of this breastplate. They were on the backside. And then that also plays into what this breastplate is called. You notice here in 29 and 30 both, and even before that, this breastplate is called the breastplate or the breastpiece of judgment. The breastpiece of judgment. And so that idea of casting those lots to see God's word would fit in that idea with this judgment that is coming. And so I think this is the basic idea. Let me back up, make sure I didn't miss anything else. I think we got everything else. Again, this breastpiece, you'll notice up in its upper corner, the gold rings that were to attach it, and you had the gold and the blue linen, and this would attach to the ephod. This would attach to the pieces. So you're getting a picture here that when the priest put this on, this was a big ordeal. This was a pretty big process to put all this on. You had to put it on in a certain way, and we'll talk about that. I don't know if we'll get there this week, but we'll talk about that of how this uniform was put on. And the thing is, we're not through there yet. Well, we're not through with it yet. Because you notice verse 31, he continues, you shall make the robe of the ephod olive blue, and it shall have an opening for the head in the middle of it, with a woven binding around the opening, like the opening in a garment, so it may not tear. On its hem you shall make pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet yarns around its hem, with bells of gold between them, a golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate around the hem of the robe. And that shall be on Aaron when he ministers, and its sound shall be heard when he goes into the holy place before the Lord, and when he comes out, so that he does not die. Let's talk about this before we go any further. So this is the robe. You'll notice this in this picture. It maybe looks a little purple or dark blue, but that's what this is. We're talking about this robe that was underneath everything. Let me go back just a little bit to get this picture here. We'll probably come back to this picture a few times. I forgot to put it where it needs to go. But we're talking about this robe, this blue robe. You're going to put this robe on. Now, there's also an interesting thing that is given here. I'll try not to make anybody sick going too fast. Is you notice verse 33, there are going to be pomegranates put on this. And there's a question about these pomegranates, or are they embroidered and just attached to the robe and standing out? Or are these pomegranates like a fitting, like I don't know how to describe it, an object that would hang loose on this? Because the idea is this pomegranate would be a pomegranate and then a bell. Aaron would wear a bell on the hem of his garment, and he would alternate the pattern of pomegranate and a bell. And a lot of people think, good Bible scholars think there's a good possibility that if they've got an actual bell hanging from this cloak, then the pomegranate probably is something physical. It's not just an embroidered fruit on here, but it is a decoration that looks like a pomegranate. And now what would happen is this, the function of this is very interesting, is that when Aaron wears this robe and wears this ephod, he has these bells on, you can hear him. And this does a few things. One, it will call the people to listen, to respond to where Aaron is. But the other thing it would do is this also gives the idea that the people can know whether or not God has accepted their sacrifice. I was reading about this and I thought it was interesting. I hadn't thought about it. But the bells that would be attached to this robe would ring when Aaron would walk. And so it's said, or one of the commentators I read said there's a thought that the people may have been able to, or the other priests may have been able to track where Aaron was in the tabernacle based on what the bells were, that they would listen to it and they could listen to it. Okay, he's at this altar. Or they can say he's at the table of showbread. He's at the altar of incense. He's at the golden lampstand. Then they can listen and go with him down the tabernacle, and they can tell when he's in the most holy place. And they could listen to hear him. If they heard the bells in the most holy place and they heard the bells leaving the most holy place, then they knew God accepted the offering. And if they didn't, then they would know that something had gone wrong, that something had been offered wrongly, and Aaron or the high priest would have died there. But it's very interesting they had these bells that you could hear Aaron walking as he went through his job at the tabernacle. And again, you know, verse 35, it shall be on Aaron when he ministers. And its sound shall be heard when he goes into the holy place before the Lord, and when he comes out. And again, this idea is so that he does not die, is proof, is to show that this is what God wanted. And therefore, Aaron had to have this on, or Aaron would die because of it, but also gave the people outside the queue that Aaron was still alive, that Aaron was able to do what he needed to do. All right, from there, you notice you shall make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it, like the engraving of a signet, holy to the Lord. And you shall fasten it on the turban by a cord of blue. It shall be on the front of the turban. It shall be on Aaron's forehead. And Aaron shall bear any guilt from the holy things that the people of Israel consecrate as their holy gifts. It shall regularly be on his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. Again, you shall weave the coat in checker work of fine linen, and you shall make a turban of fine linen, and you shall make a sash embroidered with needlework. And so let's continue reading this, and then we'll come back and talk about it. For Aaron's son, you shall make coats and sashes. Well, let's stop there. We're getting into Aaron, the sons here. This is the end of Aaron's thing. I want to look at this, the plate of pure gold. Again, we're going to go backwards, so bear with me. I'm going to try not to go too fast so you don't get sick flipping through here. To talk about this next thing. What he's talking about here, this plate of gold, is this plate right here. The turban that was to be made on Aaron's head was to have this plate. And on this golden plate was to have an engraving on it, just like these stones had engravings of the 12 tribes. This plate would have an engraving that said, holy to the Lord. And again, what's interesting about this is not only is Aaron supposed to be holy to the Lord, but the entire people of Israel were to be holy to the Lord. We talked about that on Sunday. But this was a reminder that this was holy to God, that this was to be dedicated to God. And so Aaron will wear this on his forehead. Certain translations call this later on, I think in either next chapter or later on, they'll call this the royal diadem, the royal crown, the divine crown that the priest was to wear, that was on his head to demonstrate that he was acknowledging God. And so here he is. He's got that on his forehead as a sign. Again, and the other thing about this sign on his forehead was a sign to show ownership, to show that this priest belonged to God. And so this is what we're talking about. Now, the robe we're talking about, I believe that's how I described it, is this white piece that's underneath. This would have been a white undergarments. The sash would have been this belt that's on his. And I think that's about all the piece of Aaron's royal outfit that we're going to talk about. Let me get back to where we were. So here you see, again, verse 36 is that plate that says holy to the Lord. And you're going to have that engraved on it. And then that turban, you notice a turban is going to be a fine linen. And it's going to be the fine linen that the coat is going to be worn. Now, the idea is they're going to wear this coat with a sash as well. And this coat, and we'll talk about that when we look at the priest's garments, that what Aaron wears is different than what the regular priest wore. Aaron's is this nice, fancy, beautiful garment, this beautiful blue robe with this ephod and the ephod with the shoulder plates, the breast piece, the fancy needlework belt. And again, the similarities, and we haven't really talked about this, but the similarities between the things that Aaron wore and the way God described the curtain in the tabernacle, and the first curtain covered the tabernacle is beautiful, and how he described it is very similar. And so this was, again, to show that they were God's messenger, God's worker. Then the end of this chapter, we're going to see what the regular priest would wear. And you notice, for Aaron's sons, you shall make coats and sashes and caps. You shall make them for glory and beauty. And you shall put them on Aaron your brother and on his sons with him, and shall anoint them and ordain them and consecrate them, that they may serve me as priests. And so they're going to wear these coats and sashes and caps. Now, the idea of these coats is not the idea of a coat that we have. In their time, you had a coat. It is also called other things, but it's basically your undergarments. Their undergarments would be a solid piece that would, again, have sleeves, depending on what time of year you wore it, but typically it would have sleeves in it, and it would be all the way down. It would go down to your knees, and it would be, and this one is described as being tight-fitting. Some would not be tight-fitting. It would almost be like, I guess you'd call it almost like a gown, a nightgown type thing, where it would hold down. You'd have a belt that tied it together. The sash was to hold it close to you. We're going to know that Aaron's sons and Aaron, their undergarments were going to be tight-fitting, because God said it's a forbidden thing for them to show their nakedness and either going in and out. Basically, God wanted no chance that something would, the wind would blow, or they'd go up or bend down, and somebody would see something that would be unholy and unconsecrated in the temple or in the tabernacle. And so God said they're going to make these coats, and they're going to have the sashes, again, the belts that cinch it tightly, and then they're going to have caps. Aaron's got a big turban. They're going to have a cap on their head. And again, we're not told about the details. And this tells you the difference between Aaron and the priest, is that Aaron's garment, we're given step by step how this is going to happen. And step by step how this is supposed to be built. I apologize if you're hearing some racket in the background. Somebody's exhausted. But Aaron's is told step by step the process of how this is to be made, how this is to look. The priest, we don't have that. We just have, okay, this is what they make. And so this shows the importance of Aaron's garment versus the priest. And God wants us to focus, and God wants to focus on the high priest, not just the priest. Or not. He wants to focus on the priest because, again, notice they make them for glory and beauty, but he wants us to see the significance of the high priest in his special outfit. And then you notice that we're going to see, this is a little bit of foreshadowing, verse 41. You shall put them on Aaron your brother and on his sons. Now notice, this is what's going to go on Aaron too. This coat and sash is going to be what Aaron wears typically when he's serving, except when he goes into the tabernacle. When he goes into the tabernacle, he's going to have to put on the uniform. And there's also the idea that this coat is what's underneath Aaron's high priest uniform, that Aaron put the coat on bottom, and then he put the robe and the ephod and the breastplate piece on top of that and the sash to sort of put it all together, because he's going to start next chapter. We're going to see it's going to describe Aaron getting ready from the inside out. He starts with his undergarments and goes forward. And again, there's some foreshadowing of what's going to happen, because he says here, you can put them on this, and then you're going to anoint them with oil. You're going to ordain them. You're going to consecrate them. You're going to say, these are my priests. These are the priests of the people. These are the ones who are going to offer this sacrifices, and then you're going to make them holy. And again, they're going to make them holy so that they can serve me as priest. Again, here's this idea of the undergarments. I guess I was rushing myself. You shall make for them linen undergarments to cover their naked flesh. They shall reach from the hips to the thighs. They shall be on Aaron and on his sons when they go into the tent of meeting, or when they come near the altar to minister in the holy place, lest they bear guilt and die. This will be a statute forever for him and for his offspring after him. So again, there's that robe, and there's these undergarments. I was getting ahead of myself. There's these linen undergarments that would have wore. And again, this would have been, I think I misspoke earlier. These would have probably been a sleeveless top outfit that would wear underneath. And that would be your undergarments. It would be a one piece that would go down to that goes from the hips to the thighs. It goes all the way down. And again, this would have been one thing they would wear, and it'll be on Aaron and his sons. And again, this was to cover them so they wouldn't be exposed. Because again, this may not be something we like to think about. In the ancient world, when you were out in the wilderness, you're out in the desert, you didn't wear a whole lot of clothes. You didn't wear a whole lot underneath. You, as little as you could to get to stay cool is what you sought for. So God put special instruction for Aaron and his sons of what they are to wear. And again, they're to wear this whenever they go into the tent and they go over to the altar, whatever they're doing, so lest that they should expose themselves and bear guilt. And notice again that they did this, if they do this wrongly, they're going to die. And so this is something we look at it, and this is very interesting. Twice we've been told in this idea of the priest's garment that they have to do it just right or they're going to die. And sometimes people have a hard time with this, because we look at like Leviticus 10 with Nadab and Baihu. A lot of people say, well, how could God do it? They just made a mistake. They used wrong fire. Doesn't matter. They knew better. They knew what to offer, and they chose to do something differently. It seems here they would know what to wear. And if they didn't wear it, it's their choice, and therefore they had to suffer the consequences. And this is done. I think this is done to show that God has not as much mercy when it comes to those who are serving him. And I don't mean to say that wrongly, but for the priest knew better. The priest knew what they were supposed to wear. They knew how they were supposed to behave. And therefore, they were going to be guilty of this. And they would be ones that would do it. And the idea was that if God will strike down his priest for disobeying him, then what's he going to do for the common person? How much is he going to make sure the common person will see the same end? And so again, this will be a statute forever for him and for his offspring after him. Now, one other thing, we're going to notice this in the next chapter, the idea of forever. The idea of forever is not the forever that we think of. Forever, ever, for a time, is a term that is limited. We think of forever, we think of is going to be forever, going to continue everlasting. That's not the term here in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, typically when it says forever or eternal, it's not talking about, someone talks about God, it's not talking about something that's going to be everlasting or eternal in our sense of the word. It's things that are going to be lasting until the end of the age, until this time period is finished. That this is going to be a statute for him until the law of Moses ends. And this is what the Hebrew writer will say. The Hebrew writer will say that there had to be a change in the priesthood because there's a change in law. And because there's a change in law, the priesthood had to change. Therefore, the old law went away and the old priest went away. And therefore, a new priest had to step forward. And so that's just forever. And I want to say that because this is where we get into some problems sometimes. We say, well, now, wait a minute, how can Aaron be a priest forever and his sons, but yet in the New Testament, they're not priests? All of us are priests. So there's no priesthood anymore. And Christ became the high priest. And he, according to Hebrews, what all he did, he's not a Levite. How does that work? Well, the word forever is not unlimited like it is for us. It's not eternal. It is limited to that age. That as long as that age exists, as long as that age prospers, they will be the priests. They will be the ones forever. And we'll see that again next week, even more so when we talk about Aaron and his sons being consecrated. I apologize for putting on the notes. We're going to do chapter 28 and 29. We just got through 28. I apologize for that. I was hoping to get further, but I wanted to see this garment. I think this is very interesting. Again, this garment of Aaron. I'm going to go back and I want you with that picture one more time. Is you can see this beautiful garment that was to be worn by the high priest. The high priest would wear this. When the high priest put this on, everyone knew what he was doing. Everyone knew that he was about to go into the tabernacle. And this typically this was worn on the Day of Atonement. When Aaron would go in, or the high priest would go into the most holy place and sprinkle the blood on the ark to cleanse the people's sins, to roll them forward for a year. This was a major ordeal for them to see this and to hear Aaron move throughout the tabernacle. And God wanted them to see the glory and the honor that existed for these people. But that's all that I have for tonight. I appreciate you joining us. As we mentioned in the devotional, if you haven't watched the devotional, I don't know if you watch it or not, this week and next week will be our last weeks of Zoom. I guess next week will be our last week of Zoom. After that, we will just be live streaming on Facebook and YouTube as we will resume our normal services. We will have this class in the auditorium. We will be going back there. So I won't have the Bible verses up on the screen anymore because I think that'll be redundant. Because everybody will have their Bibles to follow along. We do appreciate everyone's help with Zoom and joining with this and the streaming. We're excited to get back to our worship services, and we'll get back to our classes like we had them before. But I just wanted to let you know that that's the plan, that we've got this week and next week be our last Zoom classes unless something happens later on down the line. But for now, that's our plan. But for tonight, I appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you being here. We hope to see you Sunday morning if you can. We'd love to have you come out and join us. We meet at 9 a.m. 10 a.m. Sorry, I've been so thinking about this change we've got coming up. We'll meet at 10 a.m. this Sunday. Then the next Sunday, April 4th, that'll be Easter Sunday. We'll meet at 9:30, and we'll have Bible class. Then we'll have our morning service. But I appreciate you being here tonight. I'm going to stop before I say something totally wrong. I do appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you being here. Hope to see you soon. I hope things are going well for you. Again, if you need anything, let us know. But if not, I hope you're having a God bless week. And